Look, we've all seen the keynote, we've read through the product page, we've watched early impressions, so this is not a summary video of Apple's Vision Pro headset. There's loads of those. What I did was watch Apple's post-keynote State of the Union address. I spelunked through early developer documentation, and I will share with you how I've discovered Vision Pro to work, not simply what it is. It was made clear to me when researching documentation something that I perceived in the keynote, and that was that this headset is capable of more traditional VR experiences, but that is not the intent. It is clear that Apple wants the headset to integrate into your existing environment and reality. Apps will be able to run one of three ways. First is in a window. This can be a single 2D pane or multiple panes through multiple windows, just like apps would be on a Mac desktop. Or it can be a pane in 2D with 3D objects attached to it. They demo a window with a spaceborne satellite floating just in front of the window. And as you move your head, or literally even your whole body around the room, you can walk around the pane and see that 3D object staying static in space, but you can experience the depth and detail of said 3D object. 3D objects, should they exist, can also be manipulated with hand gestures quite easily, and we'll talk about hand gestures in a minute. And then the window Chrome, it also updates seamlessly based on what is in the background of your mixed reality space. This is all done on Apple's end and requires no work from developers, which I think is pretty neat. Now, windows can be moved, they can be resized, they can be hidden, and they appear in the default environment alongside other apps. Interestingly, this is the default app behavior and what Apple anticipates the majority of Vision OS apps will be. The second type of environment is a 3D volume. Similar to Windows, these appear alongside other content, but they are volumetric with much greater Z-depth. So they can sit atop of surfaces that augmented reality APIs have determined to be flat or moved anywhere within 3D space. So for example, one they give is What the Golf, a classic game on iOS that is being played on tabletop mode, but still in your regular environment alongside other applications in the shared space. This is the other strongly recommended app design, one that seamlessly integrates into mixed reality, can be scaled, can be moved, or hidden. The last type of environment is what Apple calls dedicated full view spaces. In this deployment, apps are standalone, where only their content appears. Inside of a full space, apps can use windows and volumes just like other content, but they can also create unbounded 3D content, and as Apple puts it, quote, open a portal to different worlds or even fully immerse someone in an environment, end quote. And what that marketing speak means to me is VR. Or at minimum, heavily augmented mixed reality, where the space, your environment, is no longer the dominant environment. You're somewhere else. Now, Apple doesn't discourage full view spaces, but they do harp on the idea that Vision Pro excels in fluidity, that with the crown, it can uniquely transition from fully immersive to windowed and vice versa. And this is an important distinction, because it lends credence to the idea that this is about integrating stuff into your existing environment, that the ultimate goal is true augmented reality, not virtual reality, and that this and subsequent mixed reality headsets are merely a stopgap required to meet the eventual goal of bona fide AR glasses, contact lenses, or whatever Minority Report implementation is yet to come. One of the most surprising and confusing things to me was how little input was demoed at the keynote. We really only saw 5 ways to interact with elements within the headset. Number 1 is eye tracking, to hover over a button or action. Number 2 is pinching your thumb and index fingers, just like a Meta Quest, to select an object. Number 3 is pinching and then flicking to scroll through content. Number 4 is dictating into text fields with your voice. And number 5 is asking Siri to perform actions like opening an app, finding a video to watch, etc., aka good luck. Now, they did highlight the ability to use a Bluetooth mouse or keyboard, as well as a Bluetooth-capable gamepad, but I would hardly consider those ideal input sources for the majority of the time, particularly the gamepad. Anybody who's played games in VR, heck, even AR, knows how immersion-breaking standard gamepads can be. Additionally, we don't know, say, how a mouse or cursor works in 3D space. Does it just jump from window pane to window pane? Can you move the cursor outside of your field of view? If you move your head, does it re-snap where your vision is centered? How does it work in 3D? There's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. But what we did get was a really surprising bit of info from the State of the Union that I am shocked wasn't announced during the keynote. The headset supports full skeletal hand tracking. Developers have provided positioning and orientation of skeletal joints for custom gesture creation or augmenting hands with information. This suggests that games could take advantage of individual digit input, which is essential for immersion creation. Now, my only suspicion for them not having talked about this or demoed it during the unveil is that it just doesn't work very well. It should be noted that this functionality is not new to the Vision Pro. It was added to the Vision framework clear back in 2020, so there's theoretically been time to work and refine upon it. Now, Apple mentioned more than once that bulky hand controllers found on other VR headsets break immersion. And I mean, I guess if Apple can do without them, then I'd agree. I just don't know how well they can do without them. I mean, it's one thing to have a very limited number of inputs, 5, relative to the number of inputs found on a controller, but it's a whole different thing if those limited input mechanisms aren't perfect. So I really hope Apple's implementation is perfect, because the best we've seen so far is from Meta, and it's frankly quite awful. Luckily, despite pretty much everyone that attended the event having said there was a pretty steep learning curve of getting used to it, it did start to feel natural, and while eye tracking was super accurate, hand tracking was a little bit behind, but still good. That's the problem. Speaking of problems, and I guess speaking of awful, you know that creepy FaceTime demo they showed where the headset attempts to create an AI version of you based on a previous face scan, and well, the mouth looks very spooky and evil? Yeah, well, that's just the beginning of this Uncanny Valley horror show. In the State of the Union, Apple elaborated on how these recreations will eventually extend beyond FaceTime by way of what they're calling spatial personas. So Vision Pro users will eventually be able to break free of the FaceTime tile prison to which they're contained and wreak havoc on the Vision sphere. The idea is that multiple Vision Pro users, so you and other rich people, will be able to share consistent spatial content. That they'd be able to see the actions of other Vision users, even remotely, and collaborate real time to make interactions, and these are Apple's words, seem natural. I mean, I don't know how these little demon hellion faces can seem natural, but okay. It seems likely they could improve over time and start to look better, but it's weird to me because it's really the only thing Apple showed that seemed metaversy. The idea that Apple, kings of Animoji and these goofy cartoon Memoji likenesses, would be so adamant in pursuing realistic AI replications of real humans in virtual spaces is strange, and I feel like it added to the dystopian nature of the event. But not more so than bringing on stage Disney's cryogenically preserved CEO Bob Iger. Disney's entire sizzle reel was bizarre, because as far as I could tell, none of it was real. This segment appeared to be purely aspirational, other than, well, sitting in a Star Wars VR environment watching Disney Plus on a screen in 2D, which also appeared in Apple's State of the Union address. Now, when I say none of it was real, I don't necessarily mean that Disney is lying or that they were using CGI. In fact, during the Marvel What If segment, a 3D bracelet is placed on the headset wearer's wrist. And if you look at that wrist throughout the shot, it actually does seem similar to imperfect object tracking that we've seen from other VR devices before. So this may well be real. I'm not saying Disney's demos are a fraud. I just don't think that they're ever coming as they were demonstrated to the platform. It was more of a, can you imagine what we can do with this? And no, that's what left me the most frustrated by this whole presentation. Now, make no mistake, I'm not claiming that the Vision Pro is going to be a failure of hardware or software. I mean, early reports at the event from people that tried it are extremely positive. And I am fully behind the idea that Apple is and will be the one to bring true polish to the headset space. The displays are a marvel of engineering. This sensor suite is more capable than any other inside-out headset. The processor for a standalone device is incredible, and hand tracking is sure to be better than any device before it. The pass-through cameras may be the first to not suck. In fact, Overcast developer and attendee of WWDC Marco Arment said that he was told all of the footage shown in the keynote through the perspective of the headset wearer was captured via the Vision Pro's cameras. That was real. That is what you will see. Now, asterisk, lighting and set conditions for these demos, they are ideal. I mean, when was the last time you took a picture with your iPhone that looked as good as the ones they show in the iPhone keynotes? Yeah, I've never taken one that good. But still, that's pretty amazing. Add all of this together and you have a hardware king. But for $3,500, it better be. The problem is that with no new experiences beyond, can you imagine? Apple is leaving the use case for this headset to developers to figure out. And look, you might say, hold on. Watching 3D video in a virtual movie theater is cool. Using the device as an external display for your Mac is great. Browsing the web with the flick of a finger is neat. And meditating through the included mindfulness app is serene. If these things sound awesome, you're right. And congratulations, you're a nerd like me, and you could have been enjoying using VR for like the last 5 years doing these same things, but just a little bit worse. There wasn't a single application shown throughout the entirety of the keynote, not one, that hasn't been demoed and released in one iteration or another on previous VR and AR headsets. And look, Apple will do those things better, yes, but I don't subscribe to the idea that my Meta Quest Pro is gathering dust simply because it's not good enough at what it does. VR isn't dying because hand tracking isn't quite good enough. No. The problem with these devices is that they require intentionality and there's no viable use case for them. It's not like the iPhone that you can just pick up for seconds or minutes at a time. I mean, the lady in the event footage that they show that's just wearing the Vision Pro, seemingly doing nothing other than packing for her trip, that suddenly gets a FaceTime call and is like, ah, she has no reason to be wearing the headset. Like, that's not real. Most of the early impressions from those that attended the event said, yeah, it's a really comfortable headset, but it's still a headset. It's heavy, and it's a little warm near your eyes, and it's a bit tight on your face. It's a device that requires intentionality. And maybe it's so much better at doing the things that other headsets already do that people who had never considered a headset now want one. Maybe the SDKs and frameworks that Apple is providing to developers will enable them to create an app store so compelling that their work sells the device for Apple, much like the App Store did for the iPhone. But look, hardware has not been the problem with VR. It hasn't been for years. It has been the software. I expected to see a black swan, a suite of apps and games that made me think, duh, why has nobody thought of this before? This is what AR needs. But there really wasn't much of anything other than AR apps that I already have on my iPhone and my Mac, and that I can use without strapping on a headset to my face, making myself look like a dick and spending $3,500 in the process. Now, I am a dick. I'm gonna love this thing. I can't wait to buy it. But I also love the Meta Quest, and I love the Valve Index, and I love all the other headsets that 5 years ago Wall Street said would dominate the future of computing, but didn't. I hope this is the next iPhone, but right now, I'm just not as sure as I thought I'd be. Let me know what you think by leaving a comment down below, and be sure to check out my other video on the rest of WWDC. Thanks so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.